So this is my video about my study that I would like to do. So my plan for my dissertation is to do a study on leadership efficacy. A little bit of background on me because I think it's important to understand why I chose this subject. I currently in my position oversee 40 orientation leaders. Prior to that, I worked with a program that had anywhere from 60 to 85 student leaders. And so leadership and helping students develop leadership skills has been something I've been passionate about since I got out of college. And it's why I really wanted to go into higher ed. So when I was actually doing our dissertation critique, I came across a concept that I'd never heard about called leadership efficacy, and that's really where I started and decided, oh, this is going to be what I want to do my dissertation study on. So the kind of questions that I've come up with, and I am still in coursework, and so I'm in the early stages of figuring out what this study will look like. But I thought, how does leadership efficacy differ across leadership opportunities? That one interests me in thinking about how at institutions you've got orientation leaders, you've got resident assistants, you've got peer mentors, you've got peer educators. And I'm interested in seeing what would the differences between across those different opportunities. What does leadership efficacy look like? Another question that I came up with that I think could be interesting to answer was, how does being an orientation leader affect leadership efficacy levels? And so for me, the schools that I have been at and I've worked at, the orientation leaders, commonly people say that they're some of the best trained on campus. They know a lot of knowledge. Their ability to lead small groups, their ability to speak in public is higher than others. And so for me, I would be curious to know of what that looks like, and how does the position actually affect leadership efficacy, if it actually does. Another question that I'm still in the process of doing some research on is, when we think about orientation leaders, I've decided to expand my lit review research and to include orientation leaders in there, because I haven't been able to find any articles that talk about skill sets of a effective orientation leader. And so as I'm thinking about doing this, one of the things I realized, I'm like, well, where's the baseline for even effective? Like, if effective OL is the baseline, like what does that look like, and where does that line lie? So those are the three questions that I would love to be able to answer through my study. The reason why I think that this is important is orientation is becoming mandatory at a number of colleges and universities across the nation. It has been said to be a best practice in terms of helping students transition into the institution. And so as we talk about this best practice, and more institutions are jumping on board and requiring all their students to do it, and using current student leaders to help incoming student leaders or incoming students learn about the institution, I'm very curious on what level of leadership efficacy do those students have. And so an orientation leader that's selected in an institution, and everyone thinks that they're great and they're highly skilled, but do we really know if they're highly skilled? Do we know that they believe that they're highly skilled? And so I think for me, it is an important question to ask. As in the field that I work in, that a lot of my colleagues, like we say, our students are the best, and I would like to know, like, are they really the best, and have some data behind that. So I'm early in the process of I'm working on a lit review right now on leadership efficacy. Some of the information that I've been able to find is leadership efficacy didn't start in higher ed, and so there are a number of studies about leadership efficacy in other areas. So as I've been reading, there's some about motivation, women in the workplace, some working with students that are not in college, some are in college, leadership and managers' motivation. So the kind of the information that is out there Also is in the early stages, I think, of being applied to higher ed. So that's also one of the things why I think it's an important question to be able to apply leadership efficacy to student leaders. The other thing I found as I have been doing my literature review is that the term leadership efficacy, so it started off in terms of self-efficacy, which is it's a person's ability and the confidence in their belief that they can complete a task or do something. And then self-efficacy was applied to leadership. And so in some of the literature that I'm reading, the term actually that they use is leadership self-efficacy. Then it shifted from leadership self-efficacy just to leadership efficacy that is based out of Pandora's self-efficacy. So I think when I think about the terms to define, one, what leadership efficacy means for the study is going to need to be one. If I do go with a route and I'm really going to focus on orientation leaders and their self-efficacy, I think I'm going to need to define what an orientation leader is and what that looks like, and so and come up with a definition that could be applied to not just the school that I'm studying, but also other schools. So I have found that there is a tool out there in terms like to measure leadership efficacy, and so I have found something that's consistent to be able to use. I really would love to do a quantitative study. Qualitative is not my strongest suit, and so I'd love to be able to get the numbers. And as I said earlier, in terms of studying the orientation leaders, it would probably be a pre and post test, so that way I could know what their leadership efficacy was before they did any training, before they got together, and then after they completed their summer position, to see if there was a change in their leadership efficacy after going through the position. When I think about obstacles and barriers to this study, I think one obstacle, and I think you could look at this as an obstacle, but also it could be blessing in some ways. So there's not a lot of research out there on leadership efficacy in student leaders in higher ed. So in terms of doing the lit review, it will involve other disciplines because there's just not much out there, and I also think that's also the exciting part, because there's not a lot out there. This study could really add to the current literature and add to what's out there. So in terms of conceptualizing my research plan and where I am, my project for this semester, because I'm still in coursework, so I'm not at getting ready for comps or anything yet, is to actually complete the literature review on leadership efficacy. My plan after that is I'm going to be working on a leadership study next semester in a DIS with Dr. Garrett Dickers and Dr. Oxendine, and so I'm hoping that experience will help expand my skills in terms of doing research, and then when I will also complete my comps in the fall is my current plan. I have selected a chair for my committee, and I have 2 of the 3 people on my committee identified, and so this fall I will identify that 3rd person, so that way I can get ready for comps, pass those after studying very hard from what people are telling me, and then in the spring start writing my proposal, and then get the IRB, and then kind of continue going throughout the process. So that's my research plan right now to be able to complete it. Thank you so much for listening.